What is going on, everybody? Welcome to, this is week 10. This sucks. The football's going to be over here soon. College is almost done, and NFL is over halfway done, and then we just kind of sit around and twirl our thumbs for the rest of the year, but, we'll try and soak this up and enjoy it while we can. Week 9 was a really good one. There were some huge games this week, so I'm excited to talk about the power rankings here. Do make sure you guys like the video, subscribe, all that helps me out, helps grow the channel, all that stuff. So let's get into it here without wasting any time. At number 32, no surprise here. They've been at the bottom, and they had just an atrocious performance in primetime television, the Thursday night game, as they got just manhandled by the 49ers, who are going to come in a few spots here. So the Raiders have a historically bad defense. I certainly, in my lifetime, can't remember a defense this bad. I know the statistics back it up. So, probably a good thing they traded Khalil Mack because they weren't going to be very good even with him. We'll see. This is going to be a 2-3 year rebuild, I think, because even offensively, they don't have a whole lot going there either. So let's move on and talk about, on the flip side, while we've got one of the worst defenses of all time that we're watching right now, we're also stuck watching, if you have to, the worst offense in NFL history. It's just awful. They don't block. They have the worst receivers in the NFL. They don't have a quarterback, but I don't even think it matters if you had anyone back there. I don't think any quarterback was going to be, anything above like a top 24 offense with this surrounding situation. So the Bills are a mess. I still think Josh Allen has a chance, but, they got to really turn this thing around in the offseason and get some offensive talent in there. And they do have a decent defense, but, I don't see Buffalo winning a whole lot of games. They were 10-point underdogs against Chicago in Buffalo in this one, and they didn't even come close to covering. So, probably a good bet to go against both Oakland and Buffalo right now, who are just spiraling. And then you definitely have a gap between those two teams and number 30 here, where we're going to have the Arizona Cardinals dropping 1. Now, I know they beat San Francisco last week, coming in ranked below them, obviously, but that was in Arizona, and San Francisco had a good week this week. We'll talk about them in a sec. But Arizona with the bye week, I just think they're the 30th team in the NFL. They're definitely more competitive than Buffalo, though, that's for sure. They just don't have a lot of firepower offensively and are kind of meh defensively. So then 29, I feel like we've already talked about them, but the 49ers here coming in at 29. Now, for me, I'd like to see them just kind of lose if I'm a Niners fan, but play competitively. I do want that high draft pick. If you could get Ed Oliver or Nick Bosa on this team, I mean, my God, that's just a huge addition. But there's definitely reasons to be very optimistic for the Niners. And you're just kind of sitting back, enjoying the games, seeing what the future might look like. But you got the coach, you got the quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo, and then you have an offensive line. And you're also in the conference where really the 3 top teams have gone all in. You could even make a fourth case there with the Saints, the Rams, the Vikings, and the Eagles. Like, these teams are all kind of giving up their future a little bit to try and win this year, whereas the 49ers, I think 2-3 years from now, they're going to have a real nice window. And that's something we're starting to talk more and more about is when is the team's window? Because with the modern salary cap and stuff, it really is about team construction in a single year or planning for the future. And the 49ers set up really well 2-3 years down the road. So you're optimistic for the Niners, but they're not going to win a ton of games the rest of the year. Can't play the Raiders every week. And then number 28, the Giants here. And I had to kind of double check if they even played this week. I was traveling on Sunday, so I did miss a few of these games. I got to go back and rewatch all of these, but that really is just a summary of the Giants season. Now, they were on bye, in case you were wondering, but it really doesn't matter because no one wants to watch this team. Their offense stinks. There's nothing of note about their defense, and they're going to be picking in the top 5, and that's all I can really say about them. And then number 27, the other New York team, who looked like a few weeks ago might be picking some things up, but they've lost, I think, 3 in a row and bad games as well. Sam Darnold can't help but turn the ball over. Their defense is actually playing pretty well, but when their offense can't move the ball and keeps turning the ball over, there's not a whole lot they can do. So, the Jets, they kind of fall in the same category with the Cardinals and the Bills. And our next team, the Cleveland Browns here, 26. All these teams really are not doing their rookie quarterbacks any favors. And I actually think all 4 of these quarterbacks on these teams have a lot of talent and have a chance to be franchise quarterbacks. But these teams all have a lot of work to do, especially this offseason, because I think that sophomore year is really important. So I think it's going to be a bit of an arms race in the draft and free agency, especially with these 4 teams as they look to, head into next year with some help for these rookies quarterbacks that have all just really struggled this year on and off. So then number 25, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about the Browns. They got to, they fired their coach. They played one of the best teams in the NFL this year. They got overwhelmed. They are going to move up a spot because the Jets have just looked worse. But yeah, there's not much really I can say about the Browns. And then number 25, we got the Tampa Bay Bucs, and they actually hung in there with Carolina in terms of bouncing back and coming back, but they got just slaughtered early. This defense is just a mess, and offensively, they have some really good weapons. They just might have the best receiving core in the NFL if you count what O.J. Howard is doing at the tight end position right now. Really impressed with their receivers. I mean, they got 3 great receivers with Godwin, Jackson, and Evans, plus O.J. Howard. Whoever is playing quarterback for this team next year is going to be really happy to have those weapons. And it's not like their offensive line is that bad. So then number 24, the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins picking up yet another scrappy win here against the Jets. I get that their record is fine, but this is what all of their wins are. It's just, playing good defense, playing conservative, basically making the other team lose the game, and that's exactly what happened against the Jets. 13-6, and that was with the only touchdown, I believe, being a defensive touchdown for Miami. So that definitely matches the narrative of the 2018 Miami Dolphins. And my God, this could end up being a playoff team, which is just crazy. Kind of reminds me of the Bills last year. We'll see. I don't see them getting in the playoffs, but they do just keep finding crazy ways to win games. And then number 23, the Denver Broncos. They're going to stay put here. I actually picked them to beat Houston, and if they made the field goal, they would have. So they're kind of coming in right around the same way I viewed them last year. Just, I don't trust their offense. Their defense can do some things, but they're a little old. They're fine. They're a really competitive team. They're definitely better than a lot of those teams we just talked about. Probably a line there between a tier gap line between the Dolphins and the Broncos, in my opinion, even if their records are on opposite ends of the spectrum a little bit. And then really the same thing can be said about Jacksonville. They had a bye this week, a great defense, a bad offense. We'll just move on. They were on bye. We don't need to keep harping on Jacksonville. And then number 21, we got the Dallas Cowboys, who just played tonight, and they looked really flat. I will say they did some nice things with Amari Cooper. That was definitely a piece they needed. He was open quite a bit. But, the rest of this offense, Dak Prescott, I did not think had a very good game. And, just the rest of the offense is very inconsistent. But, I would seriously be thinking about moving on from Dak at this point. You'll probably bring him back for cheap again next year. But I am actively looking to at least bring in someone that's going to compete with Dak, because I just don't see it, man. He's not accurate throwing the ball downfield. I think his teammates are starting to lose a little faith in him. And this was supposed to be a big week for them where he gets his receiver, and this team is a primetime game against a competitive Titans team. And they're 5 or 6 point favorites, and they really just pooped their pants and didn't show up. So definitely stock down for Dallas pretty big time this week after I was kind of buying in. And I still think their defense is really good. But the offense just taking a step back despite Amari Cooper. So a little disappointing there for sure. And then more disappointment here in the NFC. The Detroit Lions are going to drop 2 spots. 2 losses in a row against good NFC opponents, but just coming out pretty flat both times. The defense just isn't any good. They don't have a pass rush. Offensively now, no Golden Tate, so they're going to have to find ways to move the ball in ways that they hadn't had in the past, because Golden Tate was a huge feature of that offense. So they're going to have a bit of an identity crisis. Maybe not crisis, but they're going to have to refine some new things on this offense, and they're definitely taking a hit right now for Golden Tate, even though I do think they got pretty good value for Tate, and it could pay off in the long run. A guy that they were going to lose anyway. I don't think they're a playoff team, even with Golden Tate. So their stock is definitely down. And then 19, the Indianapolis Colts. Now, they were on bye, but just the fact that they're getting healthy earlier in the year, they lost a lot of close games to good competition, but were really beat up. And now they're starting to get healthy. They got their left tackle back. T.Y. Hilton, you would think would come off the bye healthy. Andrew Luck, another week. Getting hot and healthy, so I'm definitely buying into the Colts. I think they're going to have a division schedule coming up here because I feel like they haven't really played the Titans and the Jags or the Texans that much this year. So hopefully we're going to get some good AFC South competition here. And then the Titans here at 18, they're going to go up 2 spots. An impressive win in Dallas. Now, offensively, I still don't buy into this offense. They had some nice big plays in this one. Mariota running it. Deion Lewis looked good, but I still don't trust this offense vertically at all. And then defensively, they just showed yet again that they're a very solid defense. Just this team in general is just very middling. But I do think they're going to, like I said last week, find a way to get to 8-8, and then it's just a matter of if the Colts and Texans blow it. So we'll see how that all plays out. And then number 17, the Chicago Bears. I did not think they were going to cover in Buffalo, and they did. I think, the Bears, they played fine, and no Khalil Mack in this one. I think a lot of it is just Buffalo is that bad. But you do got to credit the Bears where credit's due. Trubisky, put up some points again this week. I don't think they're a very efficient offense, but they do score points. You can give them that. So we'll see. The Bears still don't have a win against like anyone ranked above them, I don't think. Let's see. I guess they did beat Seattle, but they do match up with Khalil Mack specifically against that team. So I do want to see the Bears prove it against, actual good competition, which I think they'll get a chance to do moving down the stretch here. And then 16, the Seattle Seahawks staying put here at 16. Now they had a really tough opponent coming into their house, and I did pick the Chargers this week. I didn't think that Seattle should have been favored. I think they're a good bit just outmatched by the Chargers, just talent-wise. But they hung in there. And they played tough. That's who this team's going to be all year. And then 15, another resilient, tough team that just got outmatched by superior offensive talent. Now, this has been my criticism of the Redskins. I feel like I've echoed this for weeks now as the Redskins fans pivoted from, loving me in the offseason because I said don't sleep on this team to now, not going too far with this team and saying, well, I still really don't trust this offense against other good offenses. Like, they're just not explosive enough to keep up with some of these offenses in 2018, and that's exactly what we saw this week. Like, you've got a feisty defense. They can force some turnovers, but that's not always going to be consistent. And, when they need to put the pedal down, they just don't really have that with Alex Smith and not really a whole lot of weapons. And they also suffered some pretty serious injuries this week. So, last week they get a big win and then they trade for HaHa Clinton Dix and everyone's ready to just, call this team the division winners. And after just 1 week, it's looking really grim. And I'm glad I got my bets in on Philly to win that division last week because Dallas and Washington were looking like the only guys that were going to maybe compete there. and those teams' stock are just plummeting. So Philly might win this division by default at like 9-7. So moving on, Houston Texans, they're going to stay put here. Big to go on the road and get the win. Lucking out a little bit with the missed field goal at the end. This team has, scraped away some very close wins this year. Credit where credit's due for that. Some mental toughness there, but it also, they're not out there blowing teams out for the most part, other than Miami last week. So it's a solid team, really good defense. Deshaun Watson and Hopkins can make enough plays, but they just, with that blocking, are never going to have a consistent enough offense to be an elite offense, but they might not need to be, especially in that AFC South. So let's move on. The Atlanta Falcons. Now, I know I've been saying that this team was going to slow down in the second half here as they got to go on the road, and then I kind of went against that as I picked Atlanta to win this week. So we'll see if they slow down now, but they're making things interesting, and this offense is right there at this point. With the Rams, the Chiefs, the Saints, like they just have so much freaking firepower right now. Julio Jones and Ridley are uncoverable, and then Coleman's playing great. So you just got a lot of firepower here. And defensively, they've kind of been okay defensively the last few weeks. How sustainable is that? Probably not very sustainable. They just don't have the talent at this point with those injuries. But I'm not completely ruling them out of the NFC playoff picture. I think it's going to be a hell of a run for them to do that. But they're definitely a good football team, and an offense that is really hard to stop. Really disappointed that Washington couldn't score, though, against this defense that's been just terrible. So let's move on. The Baltimore Ravens here at number 12. It's been a very profitable venture for me, betting against Baltimore in 4 of the last 5 weeks after a lot of people were buying into the Ravens. Look, it simply put is an offensive league, and the Ravens cannot move the ball. They try to run the ball as hard as they can because they know they're not going to beat teams throwing the ball 30, 40 times a game. And they can't do anything very well offensively. Defensively, they're really solid. I would argue they don't have a superstar defensively. I think Mosley, Suggs, Jimmy Smith, Eric Weddle, Jefferson, they got a bunch of really solid players, and it's a super good defense. It's one of the 3 or 4 best in the league, but you do have a certain ceiling when you're playing like Big Ben, and you don't have an Aaron Donald or J.J. Watt. You got a certain ceiling when you got a bunch of B+, A- players, but you don't have that game-wrecking player. So the Ravens, they're kind of drifting away here. They're probably the 7th team in the AFC playoff picture, in my opinion. They'll be in the mix at the end, but they got to start winning games. They've had a really tough schedule, but things are not looking up for this team. And then the Bengals inside that division, they're going to go up this week, passing the Ravens on the bye week. I just think, offensively they have a higher ceiling than Baltimore. I don't know if their defense is that far behind. So I'm just comfortable at this point putting the Bengals above the Ravens. And then at number 10, falling down a spot here, the Green Bay Packers. Now, this is a tough team to kind of analyze right now because you look at their last 2 weeks, and you could certainly argue that 2 fumbles away from beating the Patriots in Foxborough and the Rams in LA, but they didn't, and they showed points in both of those games, some crazy inconsistencies offensively. The Packers are low-key becoming a defensive team right now. It's not a great defense, but their defense is you can trust their defense more than their offense right now. They just have no rhythm at all offensively. So can they find it this week against Miami and get things rolling? Their record is not very good. They are 0-4 on the road. They're 3-0-1 at home. So I still believe that this Packers team is as good as any team on this list. And I think they've actually kind of, in a way, proved that the last 2 weeks But at some point, you got to point to the coaching and the inconsistency and the players not making enough plays, and just wonder if they're even going to be able to figure it out this year. And then at number 9, the Carolina Panthers just keep rattling off wins. Just a really impressive first half, and then just kind of garbage time for the Bucs, to be honest. The Panthers, I think they slept on how explosive the Bucs offense can be. You'd like to see them close that game a little earlier, but they did do a good job responding, going down and get a touchdown to officially close the game off in the fourth quarter after kind of a bit of a wake-up call. So a good job to respond, a good convincing win for Carolina. And then number 8, the Eagles. People want this team to be ranked lower. Just paying attention to the comments, especially the Panthers. People think, they beat the Eagles a couple weeks ago. They think it's inexcusable that I'd rank them higher than the Panthers, but upsets do happen. They're called upsets for a reason. If these two teams were to play this week, I would still take Philadelphia, but it is pretty close right now. We'll see how they heat up now that the division is looking much clearer, that they can win this thing. They get Golden Tate, so we'll see how big their ceiling's going to be this year, but I do feel pretty comfortable with them at number 8. And then number 7, the Vikings. They're going to drop down a spot here. It's not so much about what they did. It's more about the team that passed them that has really impressed me over the last few weeks. I thought the Vikes would bounce back against Detroit, and they're getting healthier. Everson Griffin is coming back, and Danielle Hunter looked great. They got the bye this week, and then we'll hopefully get a bunch of injuries. The Vikings are definitely heating up. I know that they are falling here in the power rankings, but they are a much better team, and their outlook is much brighter this week than it was last week. I just really want to stress that. I think the Vikings have a grasp on the NFC North right now. Are definitely the team to beat in that division. So before the Vikings fans come after me there, I do say stock up for the Vikings despite the -1. But it is the Pittsburgh Steelers that have really impressed me. And news today, Le'Veon Bell should be returning. And, James Conner's been great, but, Le'Veon Bell has been one of 2 heartbeats for this team, him and Antonio Brown, for the last 3 years. And getting him back in that building, a true offensive superstar and playmaker, James Conner's been great, but, I think you've seen some struggles in the passing game on and off for the Steelers team. And I think some of that is going to change as teams are a little more distracted with how frustrating Le'Veon Bell can be. So I think it's going to make this offense even better, even though the offense is totally clicking right now. But then defensively, the Steelers are playing really well as well, which is scary for the other AFC teams. So then in the top 5 here, the Chargers going into Seattle as underdogs. They do not get Joey Bosa back this week. It should be any moment now. We keep saying it, but they're playing so well without him. Melvin Gordon playing like an MVP candidate in other seasons. It's not going to happen for him this year just because the offense this year is off the charts. But they run the ball. Phillip Rivers is also playing like an MVP candidate. So I love what you see from the Chargers on both sides of the ball. One of the more balanced teams in the NFL. And once they get that elite pass rush back, we're going to really be talking here. And then number 4, the Patriots, they're going to stay put here. But, if you told me Joey Bosa was coming back this week, I think I'd probably put the Chargers above the Patriots. The Patriots are fine. They're solid. They're going to be annoying every week and be right there in every single game. But I just don't completely understand what it is they do well this year. I don't think they're super explosive vertically. I don't think their running game is... Yeah, well, let me take that back. That's probably what they do best is running the ball, but the running backs are beat up right now. Sony Michel has been injured and I think is always going to deal with injuries throughout his career, to be honest. James White's not really a running back, and now they have Cordarrelle Patterson, who's really not a running back, who can run the ball really well, but he's not going to offer anything in pass protection or frankly catching the ball out of the backfield. He's really just a straight line runner. So while they have the offensive line to run the ball, they don't really have the running backs to do it. And then defensively, I don't think there's too much special about this defense. Trey Flowers has been spectacular, but outside of that, you're really not worried about much with this defense. So and despite all that, they are going to stay here at number 4. They're still right there with the Chiefs in terms of the top teams in the AFC. I just think the Chargers are really coming right now, and the Steelers. And we said before the year that the AFC was kind of a joke compared to the NFC. Yet here we are with 4 of the top 6 teams, AFC teams right now. So the AFC is actually looking like the better conference, I would say, at this point. And then number 3, the Rams, really showing their first signs, I think, over the last 2 weeks of maybe not being this super team. They were supposed to have this spectacular secondary that would be paired with Aaron Donald and what was supposed to be this elite pass rush, and it's just not the reality. Like, Marcus Peters has probably always been a little overrated, but he's not having a great year. Talib is out for the year, so it's really just Peters, a couple safeties that are above average, and like Sam Shields and Nickel Roby Coleman. So like, it's a fine secondary, but it's not this elite secondary, and they're very undisciplined. And then in the front 7, it is literally just Aaron Donald. Like, Ndamukong Suh has been not the impact I think they were hoping he would be at that price tag. So, defensively, they just are not the best defense. And then offensively, you like what you got. Jared Goff has been really impressive this year, but I still don't, think of him as an elite quarterback. I think he's like a young Matt Ryan right now, though his arm is much more special. So they're obviously extremely explosive offensively, but they just were a little overmatched by the Saints this week, and they're still a great team, the Rams. And I'm not going to be betting against them unless they're playing the Saints again in the NFC. But definitely stock down this week for the Rams, and last week where I don't think they looked unstoppable against a Green Bay team. So number 2, it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, staying put here. They're just doing their thing. They keep rolling offensively. They don't have a ton of like super impressive wins in terms of their opponents this year. Like, I know they beat Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh was a mess at the time. So I think Kansas City's a damn good football team. Don't get me wrong, but we're splitting hairs here and trying to justify why I was willing to move the Saints up here to number 1. This was my preseason NFC Super Bowl pick, and they've done nothing but play lights out since week 1. And they're starting to get better defense out there, but offensively, they just can hurt you in so many ways. And this offensive line, what they're getting from Ramczyk and Armstead, like, it's just not fair that they have the second and third best tackles by Pro Football Focus. Just this explosive running back. You've got one of the 5 or 6 best receivers out there with Michael Thomas. They've also got like Cameron Meredith, a good pick in Traquan Smith. They brought in Des Bryant for a workout, and Drew Brees is their freaking quarterback. So just the offense is just unstoppable, and then you pair it with what's been a functional defense for about 6 games now. So I think the Saints are well worthy of the number 1 spot here, mainly just because I think they play a little better defense than the Chiefs, and I think you're splitting hairs offensively between those 2 teams. So those are the power rankings this week. Got a little long, but no harm done. A reminder to hit that like button if you enjoyed, guys. Looking forward to talking to you in the comments. Cheers as always, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.